anyone who's listened to me for any amount of time knows that I have this rule. And the rule involves coaches, and the rule involves a handful of players who it's the never doubt club, right? And it's an illustrious group. For the most part, it's primarily contained two guys. That is Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Because I grew up in an era in football where when a team kicks your ass for 20 years straight and they kick the league's ass for 20 years straight, maybe they know what they're doing. And this is with, to take my bias out, Denver had a winning record against Tom Brady up until those last few years. But Tom and Bill were always on my list of guys I'm just never going to doubt. They were so good, so successful, so great for so long. I didn't really care what was going on in the background or what the media said about them. They are in my never doubt club. I have now added one more coach. Anyone who's seen the way that I've talked about these teams or a season preview where I thought this team would be, expectations versus where they are now, this is probably my biggest miss. I thought this team, despite what they had done in the past, had no chance to be above 500, had no chance to be competitive. I thought they were bad at quarterback. I thought they were bad at a lot of offensive positions, even though we've seen some of the talent from skill positions. But to me, it just felt like great defense. Team's going to go nowhere, though. And that is, without further ado, the newest player and or coach to be added to my never doubt list. It's got to be Mike Tomlin. Look, man, you can say what you want, but the reality of what Mike Tomlin is doing in Pittsburgh this year is just incredible. Not just these last two games with Russ, but he got to 4-2 with Justin Fields. Like, they just keep winning games. The most impressive thing about New England for years and years was it was the same team week in, week out. It never changed. It never mattered. Everybody, I've said this a bunch of times, everybody as a fan has seen their team just wake up and do some of the dumbest things I've ever seen a football team do. And you just can't fathom why your team would come so unprepared, so not ready. Like, all these things, it just annoys you 3 or 4 Sundays out of the week. And the Patriots just consistently. And Mike Tomlin has gotten the Steelers toward these last couple years, really this very end of Ben Roethlisberger and to where they are now, where you could say they're clearly not as talented. You could say they're not true Super Bowl contenders because of the lack of that talent. You could say they have issues, deficiencies, etc., etc. You can make up a whole list of reasons, but he keeps pumping out winning seasons. He keeps getting production out of guys. Again, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson last year, these two guys, the most sacked quarterbacks in the league, 2 maligned quarterbacks. Yes, Fields was liked inside the actual locker room, but did not have the production to match. Russ was a dumpster fire in Denver. And those are the 2 quarterbacks that Mike Tomlin took, and he said, bet, let's go. And the Steelers right now, where you could argue, have the least amount of special, you can't even argue offensively, easily offensively have the least amount of talent in their own division, are first place after 8 weeks. They have less talent on offense than the Ravens, less talent than even the Browns, if you want to say their quarterback situation aside, which is also awful, and obviously less talent than what the Bengals do when they have both Chase and Higgins out there. And this guy just does it year after year after year. And I thought this was the year that there was just no way they could do it because of that quarterback situation, because of how I felt about Fields, because of how I felt about Russ. I thought there was no chance that Mike could get this team to be this good, this consistently. And if you think about it, this is the true icing on the cake that really should have let us know. How are you when you're at your best, when life is going good? And how are you when you're at your worst and when life is throwing adversity? The early knock on Tomlin was the Steelers used to be inconsistent. That some weeks they were this team, some weeks they were that team. When they had Ben Roethlisberger, AB, Le'Veon Bell, sometimes they'd go out there and they could score 40 points. Defense hold the team to under 10. They were like the best team in the league. And then other weeks, they were erratic. They look unfocused, not buttoned up. Did you just hear the names that I mentioned that were the stars of their team? Do you know how impressive it is to have a team be functional at all when you are employing Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown? I have more respect for those teams now and more respect for what Tomlin's done, considering now that we have started to learn some of the personalities that existed in that locker room. We all thought Mike couldn't control anything. I don't know if any coach could have controlled that. I don't know if any coach could have had, a real stable on that locker room without just starting to cut guys. And he was getting to the playoffs with those guys on his roster and those guys as his best and premier players. And when he's really had it all, when he had Ben Roethlisberger, who was ascending into his prime, when he had Santonio Holmes, he had a Hines Ward, he had the great defense, he's won a Super Bowl. Like, what else is there left? I know the standard in Pittsburgh, and I've heard this argument before, and I started to believe it, the standard in Pittsburgh should be we win championships, so let's start getting away from this winning season argument. And I started the season off with, hey, winning seasons sound cool, and non-losing seasons sound cool, except when the first time you have a non-losing season, the first time you don't have a winning season, then all that stuff goes out the window. Because the second you lose, now we're going to start talking about haven't won a Super Bowl in over a decade. Now we're going to start talking about all these issues in the locker room. Now we're going to start discussing all the negatives, because that is a low ceiling, it's a high floor, low ceiling kind of accomplishment. But when you actually look at it in real time, it is beyond incredibly impressive. Like, Mike Tomlin deserves all the praise. Mike Tomlin deserves all the credit. Mike Tomlin is just, again, I only have a handful of guys that have ever made this list, especially in the NFL. There's a handful of guys in the NBA. There's a handful of guys in Major League Baseball. But in the NFL, it's primarily just been Belichick and Brady. And now I'm ready to add Mike Tomlin to the Never Doubt list. We will lead off the show maybe either tomorrow and or whenever the series actually concludes. But I do want to give a shout out and an early congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers for, in my opinion, winning the World Series last night. Look, the New York Yankees are not coming back from down 3-0. I don't think there's enough time for Judge to just totally kick it back into stream and be who he's been during the regular season. Stan's had a great postseason, but it's clearly not enough. Do I think that there's a plausible, and I saw some people mapping this out because you have to create headlines and got to create stories when you're in media, that people said, oh, well, if they could win tonight, and then they could win the Garrett Cole start in Game 5, and now it's 3-2, and you put some pressure back onto LA. Well, I agree that is the better, for everybody, that is the better way for this series to go. More games, more exciting baseball, create some drama, create some tension. That is for the public how I wish this series would go. And you see a lot of sportscasters who are finally really starting to pick up baseball, who's, again, there's been a really good World Series for baseball. A lot of people are watching, both here and internationally in Japan. And there's a lot of media guys who want this to be a more competitive series because we have a lot of eyes on baseball. But the reality is the Dodgers are the better team. The Dodgers are now going to be able to play, yes, it's a bullpen game tonight, but it's almost a stress-free bullpen game tonight. It's the kind of game where you don't need everyone to go a perfect inning or a perfect inning and a third because your season is on the line or the series is on the line. No, if a guy gets off to a rough start, the first guy who comes out or who's the starter in this bullpen game, he could pitch 2 less than stellar innings. And another guy could come out in the 5th inning, he could pitch 2 less than stellar innings because you don't have to win this game. If you're the Dodgers, and again, I think they do win. I think they win in 5. And I think there's a really good chance, honestly, they win tonight. But this is a stress-free bullpen game. Dave Roberts, he's made all the right decisions because they've all worked. There's an argument that Dave Roberts is still a little too bullpen happy. He goes to guys too quickly. But because they've been winning these games, because Freddie Freeman hits the walk-off, because Freddie Freeman's been on fire and he's been the World Series MVP by a mile to help them get this 3-0 lead. That's why it feels like Dave Roberts has made all the correct decisions. But there's still a lot of things that could potentially go wrong. But the way they're swinging the bats right now, Freeman, Betts, Ohtani hasn't even had really a great game. I still expect him potentially tonight to finally have that breakout game. The Dodgers, again, I said this yesterday, whoever wins Game 3, if the Yankees could actually push out the series to get to 6-7 games, that was going to help them win. And if the Dodgers could do the knockout punch 3-0, and to me, that felt last night like the knockout punch. Essentially 4-0, a home run with 2 outs in the 9th inning. And David Ortiz said this. I want to emphasize this. You can tell when something is genuine. There's a lot of sports rants that go viral. There's a lot of rants in general that go viral. I don't think what David Ortiz did last night was a rant. When David Ortiz called out the energy of the Yankees pregame, during the game, the fans, the crowd, like a lot of that stuff does matter. You know, it's one thing, the players are already super tense. These guys make millions upon millions of dollars, have $100 million contracts. Juan Soto's trying to play for maybe the biggest contract in MLB history. They're in the World Series. They know the way sports media works, which is if they play well, they're a hero. They talk about them like a legend. And if they don't play well, Aaron Judge, they're going to be talked about as if they should be in the minor leagues. But the fans can't have that kind of energy. The fans need to be energetic, excited, screaming, shouting, regardless of the score, from the first inning. That's where a lot of these guys, especially role players, are going to get that energy. You're going to be able to help loosen up. And David Ortiz, who's been in these situations, he's won World Series, he's been a part of these pennant runs. It wasn't so much let me crap on the Yankees because, I'm a Red Sox legend. It felt genuine. It felt like he was truly trying to express, hey, all these things this team is trying to do, the fans are a part of that, and we need the fans to be a bigger part of that and do their contribution, which is bring the energy, bring the excitement, doing all this stuff. And it just didn't feel like they were doing that. And so, again, a lot of rants go viral, a lot of these big, heated, get angry, blah, blah, blah. But what David Ortiz said, while it did go in its own sense viral, and people are now talking about the energy of the Yankee fans, that is something I want to see tonight. Are they going to be more energetic? Are they going to be more lively? Are they going to be involved in the game even though they're down 3-0? Or are they just going to look like how they looked in Game 3, which was lethargic, not really that. Like, they looked more tense than the players, and there's never a reason for fans to look more tense than the players. You are there to enjoy the game. You are there to observe. Let the players who make all the money and who are going to face the criticism, let them be tense, and it's your job to help loosen them up. So, love what David Ortiz said. Again, I think the Dodgers delivered the knockout punch last night. They're up 3-0. I'm here for the hate watching of the Yankees, so I'm glad they're down 3-0. I think for the betterment of the sport, the Yankees need to come back and make it a series, but I realistically think this ends tonight, and then we'll end tomorrow crowning the Dodgers World Series champions. Oh, man, a lot to get to today. So, Tony is going to stop by. We didn't have him yesterday. He normally stops by on Mondays. He is going to stop by later today. Also, how come organizations just don't, like, they decide to do something, and then the second it doesn't look right, they just haven't, like, why do they have no convictions? They just keep changing and being wishy-washy. We'll discuss more after the break. This is HardFoul Radio.